Welcome to another In Conversation. My name is Jakash Kapin. I'm currently in London, United Kingdom. In Conversation is our series of bi-weekly conversations and interviews and discussions with one or two members of the global vocal improvisation community. So today I don't have to go very far in my imagination. We're going to talk to Kavita, who is a London-based looping artist, mover, improviser, creator. It's someone that I met in person maybe 2 weeks ago in a vocal jam in London, but I've known about her work for a while, and especially I was following her Instagram. As always, this is also an invitation to join us over at thewellvocal.com, where you can find the global map of events and members, as well as the resources page. You can also join our monthly forums as a member, and lots of other things are waiting on for you there. Okay, let's see if Kavita is able to.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. This is
Nice
my
to
first
see you.
ever live.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just went straight in with the invented language. How are you?
I am
I'm
good.
so happy that we're not geographically as far apart. And I'm also
Yeah.
glad that we met in person before this interview. That was so lovely.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. Like, it really puts me more at ease that like we had this interaction because you're not just like this random stranger. Like, I have a sense of who you are.
Exactly.
Through your
But
sound as well.
do you like interviews? Do you like being interviewed?
I
Do you like this kind of space?
have never had an interview before. This is my
Okay,
first one.
great. I think this is a perfect first interview. Very
Yeah,
relaxed and informal. And it's only going to be cookie improvisers,
exactly.
who listen back and watch it. It's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking recently about that in terms of improvisation and conversation. Like, it's the same thing, what I do with my looper and what you do with conversation, it's like one of the same. And so it's almost like for so long I've struggled to socialize and like struggled to be in conversation. But the more I kind of step into the improvisation and the vocal elements of it, the more I see how it's like the same thing in conversation. So there's a cool interlink between the two.
Definitely. So let's start maybe at the beginning. And I'll ask you questions that also I don't know and I'm interested in. So how did you find improvisation? Or maybe you have some, early musical memories linked with voice. But mostly I'm interested in, what drew you to this way of using voice with like completely falling off the edge and being in that vulnerable space that we're in when we improvise.
Mm. Well, I don't know if I ever like improvised sounds as a kid. I definitely had a lot of freely like singing things. Like, I don't remember this, but my sister said in a supermarket I just wouldn't stop singing and she was getting really embarrassed by me. I think I was 2 years old. So I was probably just like freely singing random things. But yeah, I never experienced like improvisation, which is probably why I didn't really have this connection to singing growing up. Like, I sang songs, but I never really thought of myself as a singer. I would just sing with like the guitar, and it was almost like trying to mimic another singer. For me, it was Avril Lavigne. So I was like trying to sing like her, and it would just feel like not me. I'm trying to be someone. So I sort of just stopped singing for pretty much like most of my teenage years up until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. And I found the ecstatic dance scene. So I started getting into movement and dance. And this was like unlocking something. Like, there was like this creativity that was beginning to move through me. And I was at like an ecstatic dance festival. So I'd been there all week long, and I was like dancing, but I wasn't singing, but I was just doing a lot of movement to dance music and connecting with people. And on like the last night, there was a DJ set going on, and me and two other girls who I had bonded with ended up just being outside the tent on the ground, just freely improvising for the entire set, and I'd never experienced that before. It was just like thinking about trees, making random sounds, meowing, and just like it was just this freedom that I experienced. And all three of us were just like, what was that? We don't know what that was, but it was magic. And so after I came back from that festival, there was this desire to sing, but I didn't know in what way. Like I tried singing a song, and yes, it felt nice to sing a song, but it wasn't that same feeling. And so I think from that point, I just began to start to like sing over the top of instrumentals like Ham Pan, or if people were singing after a dance, I would just like tone. I just like to tone. I hated words. I've never ever picked up words. So just sort of like tone and make sounds, and through that it just expanded, and this voice emerged from me that I'd never heard before. And it almost, I always say, like it feels like I'd never heard it before, but it felt so familiar, like it was like coming home, like there was something that was like, this is me. It felt kind of ancestral. It felt like the first time I connected to like my South Asian roots, because I've always felt a bit disconnected growing up. So this sound that was coming through me really felt, yeah, just something like home-like. Yeah, that was the beginning of the journey.
Okay, and then how did the looper make its way in, or how did you find that part of your practice?
Yeah, so I think I remember like hearing, do you know singer Mei Lan?
No, I don't think so.
She's a incredible singer. But I remember on YouTube watching her videos, and she was looping her voice, but I didn't know what she was using. But I remember being like to someone like, "What is that? I don't understand what she's doing with this magic." But then I didn't know what she had, yeah, what device it was. And then after a period of time, I was on Instagram, and I came across this woman called Clara Sophia, who I actually ended up working with for a month, who was like my vocal coach. And she was using this device, and I remember like messaging her, like, what is that device? And she told me, and I immediately went and bought it. It was like no question. I like knew I wanted it. I wanted to just drown in the sound of my own sounds. So yeah, it was just like this immediate knowing that I want that machine.
So it was a Boss 505, right? Or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
newer edition of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And I used it once and didn't use it for like 3 months, I think.
okay. So it took a while. You didn't
Yeah.
go straight in.
Yeah.
And then when you were developing your practice, did you look up to any inspirations or particular ways of looping? I know that for you it's all very much so based with the movement, with the embodiment, and that's a big part of the way you loop. Maybe
Mm.
just tell us a little bit about how it developed your looping practice, then over time.
So I think I didn't start off with the intention of making it movement loops. Obviously, like it was born out of movement for me, like singing. But initially, it was just me kind of wanting to be in sort of meditation with sounds. Um, and I think from that, yeah, from that place, like when I just started to go deeper into it, and I think I set myself the challenge. So I wanted to beatbox because there was just something interesting about adding beats to it. And I think I set myself this challenge to like do 30 days of beatboxing. Um, and I think because I set myself this challenge, it made me actually sit down with the looper, not every single day, but I started to explore beats more. And I think because my music is so, like the music I listen to is dance music, so I feel like it just organically began to shift into dance music. Like when I started adding the beats, I naturally wanted to add like a dance beat, and it kind of, yeah, evolved from just the looping challenge into like I make improvised music using my dance music, using my voice. And when I would create these loops, it moves me, like as it starts to form, like my whole body begins to move. And especially when you're starting to add the beats, then it's like another layer. And yeah, I just find like with the looping, because there's so much repetition, you're almost like in this constant motion, and then there's like a slight shift that kind of might move you in a different way. And that like tiny shifts, you don't have to think about where to move. It almost just moves you. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. Yeah, and then I also want to ask you about content creation because I talked to a lot of improvisers and a lot of them find it hard to combine the freeness of improvisation with this idea of, having to document and capture and then edit. And so I wanted to ask you from the outside, it seems like you're quite, with it, you kind of enjoy it. I could say you're really good at it, but I wonder how does it feel to you? This whole, or maybe even the decision to decide sharing online. Was that, did you think about it? You just did it and it was all intuitive? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm having like a lot of conversations about this now. Um, yeah, I think initially it was just there was like a freedom there of just, I'm this beginner, I'm just exploring my voice, I'm sharing these like experiments and something about, so it's funny, like when I started sharing the looping challenges, like I just hadn't figured out how to record the sound properly through
Hmm.
the looper. So I would literally just like put my phone up and record terrible sound quality, terrible camera quality, and I would just post it. But I think there was a freedom in posting like such raw footage of like not perfect footage. And I think if I had immediately gone to recording it properly and everything being all like perfect, I don't think I would have actually started to share. So there's something where like the messiness and not needing things to be perfect really helps me like begin to share. But I did find like over time by the 90 days, because I ended up doing like a 90-day loop challenge, which took me a year to do. So I didn't do it every day. But by the end of it, it was I had kind of felt like I was almost in this perfectionist zone of like, oh, it needs to sound good. And I didn't like that feeling of like, because improvisation is like, if you get more in your head about it needing to sound good, you kind of block yourself from curiosity and more of the creativity. So I had to like really like step back. And I think it's this constant like sharing and then reassessing like what your relationship is with it. Because right now I've taken a break from
Hmm.
posting to rediscover more of the curiosity, especially after I met you guys, the improvisers. That really
Us
inspired me more.
improvisers.
Yeah, you've inspired me. But like there was just this, yeah, when I kind of experienced people that are like so deep in their vocal improvisation and they've been doing this for years, it showed me like, oh, okay, there's like I feel like I need to break it again, like
Mhm.
I thought at the beginning there was a beginner's curiosity, and then I'm like looping, and I'm almost like getting into patterns of like familiarity, which is fine. I think it's nice to have, fall back on patterns that kind of come, but I'm at a stage where I'm like, okay, break it and then come back for a different space. And I think when you do that, it might be a better time to take a step back from posting so you can, yeah, get into that. But I definitely feel I see the benefits, and I also see
Mhm.
how it can shift and get in the way. One other thing though, with a lot of my loops, my favorite loops that I've shared have been loops where I had not set out to record it. So I've just been like, I'm just gonna loop. But then because of that intention, because I'm not like wanting to share it, the loop ends up being so like juicy and so good that I'm like, okay, I'm in the loop now. Let me record it. So it can be a place of like, you don't need to just set out to like record. You can be in the flow of something and then press record, and
Mhm.
that can actually help you like still stay in
Yeah, yeah.
that freedom.
But I
Yeah.
guess that element of you need the setup there so that you can press record at the right time, and you need to have, I think, some kind of familiarity, with the medium so that it doesn't then feel like once you press record that breaks down your flow, right? So it
Yeah.
is that idea of testing it out before and then maybe not always recording for the purpose of sharing, but having
Yeah.
setup ready and a relationship with I guess the instruments of it, like where you would place the phone and the sound and all the rest of it. You can then press record when you're feeling good about the improvisation and you might want to share it. Any
Yeah.
kind of tips that came out of that process for people that wanna, yeah, just be in the flow and capturing and sharing their improv content online?
Mm. I definitely think spend time doing it without the recording first. So like maybe that's an hour, like what I just said, where I was just looping on my own, getting into the flow of something. And then yeah, what you just said, like you do need to know how to set it up. For me, with looping, I know how to just like start recording through my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just start recording laptop, put a camera up, and that's it. It's quite quick once you have your setup. So get your setup like very easy, so there's no friction. You want to like remove the friction of like recording, because the more friction, the more time you spend like faffing around, the more you're going to be like, I'm recording, I'm recording, I'm recording. So it's almost like, yeah, just have a play, have a freedom there first. And also I think don't I think this is what I ran into a problem where I was posting too much. And I think maybe initially it might have helped, but after a while now I'm like, okay, if you post too much, if you're sharing too much, you almost start to create and like make things and think, oh, I should post this, or that kind of can shift your can get into your brain a bit. So definitely I'm in the place where I want to post less often and make sure that I'm posting from a place where like I have like reveled in the joy of the creation first before going to post it, rather than just being like, this is good, and just like chucking it onto Instagram. But it's a process. It's a big
Yeah,
process for me.
yeah, and also you post a lot on YouTube as well, right? So
I've
Instagram,
just
your main.
started. Yeah, and actually, so I'm being drawn more to like YouTube, because I feel with Instagram it is wonderful to share like clips and things, but I feel like, so I was thinking about this, how when I'm sharing a clip of a part of my looping, there's usually like a real excitement in that element that I'm sharing, but a lot of the excitement has been built up from the beginning of the loop. It's not just like here. It's like that slow progression has turned into this magic, and that feeling I have is from the entirety of it. So I feel like through YouTube people have a chance to actually experience the growth of the loop as it goes, and I feel like that's why I want to put more of my energy into the longer
Yeah, and
content.
also they can enjoy it and they can dance to it. Like they can dance with the whole set, like the whole 20 minutes or half an hour, and sing with it. And it's not just while you're scrolling, you see this 1 minute, which is nice, but I think that can lead, yeah, maybe to a more embodied experience over on YouTube. So
Yeah,
people follow you also on
yeah,
YouTube. Along, oh,
YouTube.
on.
I'm a YouTuber.
Exactly. And then, yeah, my question is about meeting the vocal improv community, because as you know, for many people, they might have, reference with Bobby in the United States or Rhiannon. A lot of the community that I know were people that were connected through that, and maybe also, visited the United States for the Omega Institute retreat, which was kind of a gathering for a period of years. So, but now we had this experience of us doing a little jam organized by Phoebe Osborne in London of vocal improvisers, and you coming in and actually doing the looping with real people for the first time. So I just want to, I don't know, hear about that
Yeah,
experience.
that was amazing. Credits to, I forgot what the woman's name, the improvisers choir.
But yeah, Jenny Roditi as well.
Yeah,
And
like that whole the experience of applying what I do to Looper and doing it with humans was like so fascinating, so interesting. And I think it gives, it's a different feel. Like I obviously love looping on my own and creating, but like creating improvisation in a group is, I think, something so magical that people have no idea about. Like this is what me and my friends do when we hang out. So we just like improvise madness on our own. And I think, yeah, so many people don't know what it is. I didn't even know what improvised vocal improvisation was. I was singing and I was like, what is this? Is it intuitive singing? I don't know. And I only like later on found out what it was. So I definitely feel like, yeah, this is something that I want more people to access, because a lot of people, when they think of singing, they're thinking like, I need to sing perfectly, or I can't sing. But then when you experience something like the human looping, where people are just making sounds and repeating things, it's like way more accessible to anybody. And I actually, it's funny because I did that improvisers what was the thing that we did? What was that? Human loop is, yeah, human looping. I did that obviously with you guys, and then the week after I had a looping workshop, and I was like, this is just perfect, and I used it. I used it there, and it just went down wonderfully. Everyone was just having a great time, and I think they could have a feeling of like what they would do on the loop station by doing it with other people first. So yeah, those spaces are fun. People just have a good time.
Yeah, and I guess what we did was kind of a balance between circle singing and conduction with like a method. So then maybe I want to ask you about your, for now, outside perspective on the vocal improv community, because a lot of the times it can also become a small niche thing that it's its own bubble and that is accessible as a practice, but sometimes becomes inaccessible in terms of how people get to know about it and who's invited or how, you know, how we communicate about it. Just from your perspective right now, anything that you would want to say about, yeah, how the community can, I don't know, become more open, or what kind of communication you would wish for, or what kind of spaces you want to create in? So it's kind of quite a broad question, but just in your current perspective.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that. Could you say when you advertise something as like vocal improvisation, I don't think many people will
It's
understand what that
dry,
is.
and it's
So
dry.
yeah, so it was actually really hard, and so part of me actually, I feel like I've kind of stumbled upon something that is a really good way of advertising it. Because like with the looping, I'm like, that's interesting, isn't there? Something happening, and then through that, it's like, oh, this is vocal improvisation. And I think what I realized is a lot of people want to move and want to dance. That's something that's quite easy to put out there. So like what I would love to grow is the interplay between the two, because I feel like for me, like the sounding, you know, this when you're improvising, like your whole body is moving, isn't it? Like it's not just you making sounds. There is such a link between the two, and I feel if you can kind of draw people in through like movement things and then exploring your voice in those spaces, they can get curious. Because me and my friend, we've been doing these events called Moving Soma, and yeah, like the last one we did, we had some of them are more like movement based where I just create loop and people are moving. The last one we had like a little play with more improvisation and sounds, and so people didn't know what to expect. They just came to this thing, and then they were sort of making some sounds. We were doing some human looping, and then by the end of it, like everyone was just in there like freely sounding and opening their voices while moving. And afterwards people were like, what is this? And I think through that you can like, it's vocal improv.
But you
So
don't tell them. You don't tell them before.
no, you're like, there's something special here. You
Mm.
guys will see. Yeah.
It.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to ask you about London, you know, because I've lived in London for 10 years, and I'm really interested in this combination of, you know, a big city life, which is can be about, you know, something quite fast paced, almost hustly, and this idea of too many things going on, and how that balances out with something very embodied, intuitive, meditative. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's quite a big contrast. So I
It's
just wonder, like, what you think about that. How do you perceive?
that just reminds me of like this moment where I was I was at home, and me and someone was dancing. Me and this other girl were like improvising. I was playing guitar and we were just singing random things, and he was moving. And like someone that was there got really emotional because she said, in this like busy city, like you've just created this moment of just peace and silence in the sounds and the improvisation. And I really feel that like when I'm in the sounds, no matter where I am, like I work at a school where there can be so much going on, and I'll just be playing music and I'll be in this moment between us, and it really does take you away from like the chaos that's going on around you. And I think it is possible to drop into the space of like sounding and improvisation, and all else kind of fades away. I do think that's possible because I've been experiencing that in the busyness of London, I have so many moments of calm and peace within the music that I make. And like, yeah. So I think it's possible.
Yeah. And I guess it's also possible not to fully block out the experience, but to invite the sounds in,
Yeah.
so you don't feel separate, to the business, and
Yeah.
you can also kind of process all the impulses that you're getting
Yeah.
through practice. So
Sometimes
maybe,
I listen to trains
mm,
and I'm like,
mm.
oh, this is a good sound.
I I do love train sounds. Maybe also kind of my last question really about what's coming next, especially with the kind of London scene as you see it. What kind of events would you really like to, organize if you could have a dream event set up in London? What would that be? Just kind of what your thoughts are on what's next for Kavita.
What's next for Kavita?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm really like wanting to step more into these dance events because I feel like there's something really interesting that happens when you're moving to loops. But I would love to combine, yeah, what I was saying earlier, like the dance element with the vocal elements and kind of put them two together and see how that can expand and how we can explore that. I feel like it'd be really cool to team up with other vocal improvisers like yourself or with Phoebe and do events where like someone is doing like the vocal improv sides of things and then I can do like a dance part. I think collaboration is where like a lot of magic can happen. So yeah, definitely wanting to explore more dance and sound and how they can mix
Mhm.
together. Yes.
And beyond that, just a question maybe about the well and these online spaces of connection. Like, how do you perceive, what good can we do on Instagram, when sharing improvisation, or what should we be sharing and how anything that you feel
Mm.
is kind of important or can really bring people together in these online spaces?
I feel like sharing the clips of those moments. Like when I shared that clip from our jam together, there were people that responded to this like, "What is
Mm.
that? I'd like to come to." So it's like sharing the like those moments, like because I think we can talk about it, but when you hear it, like there's something in you that you're like, "Oh, what is that?" And there's a curiosity there. So for me, that's what hits me. Like when I see, so when you share things where there's someone improvising, it's like it stops me in my tracks. I'm like, there's something so like curious and interesting about people who are improvising because it feels different. And I think the more you just sort of just share these experiences and these clips of it, the more people get curious by what is that. And
Mm.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And to finish off, this idea of conformity and being, again, in a big city where, yes, you have the freedom to do things, but there's also a dominant narrative that probably wants you to conform in some way. So, what keeps you non-conforming? Like what keeps you improvising on the street with your friends? What is?
What keeps me? Oh, that's a difficult question. I think it's just because it makes me feel alive. Like, I think for so long I haven't felt this like freedom or this joy until I found dance and singing and improvisation. So it's like, why would I not? Like, it's almost like once you feel it, once you experience it, you don't care. Like, you just like, I don't care because I get to experience this aliveness and I can do it wherever I am. So yeah, it's all about the weird, isn't it?
Of course it is. Oh, thank you so much for coming on, chatting with me for this half hour. And again, people are very invited to go on your page, check the improvisation, go to the YouTube, be in touch about future events in London and also elsewhere. And I'm sure, hopefully, you can send us like another one of your loops, in time, every
Yes,
couple of
that.
months. We can get a
Maybe
little
another
like,
collab.
and
And
especially have some
hopefully,
suggestions,
in
other, people that loop in this way and that loop dance music, so we can feel
yeah,
them. That would be great too.
yeah. I'm hopefully going to be launching like a looping course in April.
Okay.
So stay tuned if you want to like learn how to loop.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. So, Kavita, was such a pleasure.
Yes, it was lovely.
Occasion, hopefully in person for more in-person looping. Okay.
Yes. that's it.
Okay. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.